Hey guys, we haven't done a video for a little bit here, and I thought today we'd do just a couple things and try to make it a short video. But let's do poppies. Poppies and poppy pods or seed pods of the poppies. I kind of put some on here that you can see. So these are the poppy pods, the seed pods. After the poppies have been in bloom, then the blooms fall away and the centers of the poppies turn into these little seed pods. Now, if you were to break, so the seed pods will start coming probably within a couple more weeks. You'll see them on the poppy plants, but they start to dry out, and if they stay on there, the poppy pod will stay the same like this, but the colors of it will change, but it'll start to dry inside, and these teeny poppy seeds are kind of like a piece of salt. Oh my goodness, they are so teeny. And so you can get a lot of poppy seeds from that. But the poppies themselves, I've seen beautiful poppies that were in bloom just a couple weeks ago, even up till almost a week ago, but it's getting a little hotter, so poppies aren't a friend of the heat. So this is a little poppy pod before it turns into the flower, and there's kind of a little, actually sometimes there's kind of a little line, and then that will start to crack open, and when that cracks open, then these petals start popping out, and they're beautiful. They actually remind me of, I don't know if you guys know what this is, but tissue paper. They're just so fine and delicate. They're really quite beautiful. The poppies, actually I have them over here on my iPad so we could open them up just a little bit taller. The stems of them don't necessarily grow straight. So you always think of poppies as being graceful because the stems, they'll kind of sway in the breeze, and they are kind of more curved, or they'll have a couple curves in them, and then the poppy flower will be at the top. So look at these beautiful poppies. Let's just kind of, poppies are in a whole variety of colors. You don't even think of a poppy as being, well, yellow. I was going to say you don't think of them as being yellow, but yes, there's yellow poppies, pink poppies, red poppies, orange poppies, kind of a deepy, kind of a purple color poppy. So there are a whole variety. So we could choose any color we wanted to do today, and we're going to start it. I'll put the stem. No, actually, I'm not even going to put the stems on. We'll just start it with a dry. Oh, I lost my favorite brush here. Just a second. I gotta reach down and pick it up. Okay, so we will start with the stems or the poppies, and then we'll come back in and put a stem on them. And so it's dry paper. And we're going to get our paints a little bit wet. I'm going to use this set because there's a variety of colors I can access really quickly. I'll just get this a little bit wet here because maybe I will pull in some of those. A little bit more. So poppies, let's just look a little bit more. Poppies can be round once they open up. If you see them at this angle, you're going to see the centers are dark, and sometimes the centers have a bleed out into the flower. Let me just see if we can see. So now some of these, the poppies aren't just open flat, but we see them from the side, and so then we see the stem and then the side of the poppy. So we can do all of those angles. Let me just come now. Another thing I wanted to show you today, and that is, and I don't know if how much it'll show up, but this is the paper I make my cards on. It's Strathmore. It is an okay paper, not my favorite. This is Arches. It's a French paper, and the same weight. It's a cold press. This is cold press, 140 pound. But when you paint with them, there's such a difference, and you notice that when you're painting. I don't know if you'll be able to see that visually, but I have the two different types. I thought we'd do a poppy on the Strathmore, a poppy on the Arches, and just see if we can visually see the difference. So I've got dry paper, wet brush, and a little bit of paint, and let's just make it as easy as we can. Bring our brush over just kind of in a circle, and let's bring it down a little bit in a circle here. So then sometimes poppies will have a different, more than one petal. So we can come back in and I did mention, so one of the words that I would use to describe a poppy is delicate. Even when they're really large, there's just something about them that is just quite delicate. Now, the petals are wet enough that they may even be too wet. But so if I add just a little bit more color to that, it may kind of bleed out just a little bit, which is always pretty. So I'm adding just a little darker here, just on the edges, just in the middle here. And now I'm just gonna actually just bring it in on the top. And so I'm gonna leave it just like that and then let it dry, and we'll come back and work with it just a little bit more. Oh man, I got a lot of water on that. I'm gonna take this water off. Doesn't hurt anything, it's just it's gonna take longer to dry. Okay, now I'm gonna do the same thing. Dry paper, just dipped it in the water, gonna pick up a little bit of color, and I'm gonna maybe make the similar strokes over here on the arches paper. Oh, I got a lot more color there. So that's gonna certainly show up immediately there, but let's see if we notice other things that's a little bit different about the papers. Like I said, I'm not for positive how much you'll be able to visually see, but working with it, it's almost like night and day, the two different paper types. You do the same things, not that you change what you do, it's just how the paper takes what you do, you know, how it takes the water, how it takes the color, how it spreads the color, how it spreads, how much intensity the color stays, how easy it is to work with. Those are all the differences that you'll see. And I can visually see here, I'm not sure what the camera's picking up, but this is definitely taking the colors better, in that this is quite washed out. Again, it might be a difference in how much water, but from my standpoint, I know how much water was on my brush and paint was on my brush, and this one is definitely a little more better to work with. Okay, so now let's do a poppy that I'm gonna just maybe choose a different color just for fun, but no reason. And let's just do the poppy now from an angle where we're not seeing the center flat on, but we're just seeing kind of some of the blooms, petals. Remember I said I think they kind of look like, what did I say? Tissue paper? They're just extremely delicate. Again, we're gonna see the difference. There was more paint on there, but we're just gonna come in and just make these easy little strokes that are gonna be the side. So then when we come in on our stem, we're just kind of seeing it from the side. We're not seeing it right down. But even in seeing it like that, sometimes there's gonna be another petal. So we'll just put another petal in the back area here. And sometimes there'll be a little bit of lines when it's like this, because it's come, you know, I remember I told you it was in the poppy pod, and then that breaks open and then the petals start to unfold from there. But even though when they unfold, they still have some texture to them. So there's different ways to kind of show that. And we've got our two kind of sides from the poppies. Now as those dry, we can come back in and do a little bit different things with them. But what I don't want those as the lines as prominent as they were. but this one's dry enough. I can come back in and give us some little stems, and that'll give us a little reference to how we're creating our flowers. And remember, I mentioned that these poppy, one of the things that's so graceful about them is they're very, very thin petals, but also the way the stems don't grow in a straight line. They can have one little curve, or they can have two curves to them. And so I'm just adding some petals to our flowers until they dry. I'm also, while I'm doing this with a pen, I'm going to bring in some of these other characteristics of the poppies, and here we can see it in two ways. Remember, I said that this little part here has the lines, and then that pops open, and then look at this. It's starting to pop open, and then our petals are going to start unfolding out of there. Then the other part is, remember that once the petals have fallen off the flower, then this pod is left. It's a little blurry there, but you can see, and that's what these are. So I'm going to add just a couple of those in our picture here. And sometimes just adding those identifies what kind of flowers you are painting, because sometimes roses and peonies, they kind of look alike, but if you bring in the different, either they're different petals or they're different seed pods or casings, then that identifies, oh, that really is a peony. No, that's not a rose. So let's bring in some of these curved. Now, before they get their blooms, these little pods are heavy, so they come up on the thing and then they like to hang over. And again, that adds so much to that graceful appearance that poppies have, and they kind of blow in just graceful. So I'm going to do one here too, where they're just kind of coming over. I'm going to do a couple here because I've really used up a lot of paper on this. So let's use it up, the space up. So here we go. Let's do a couple more. Bring it maybe here. We'll let that stem be behind there. Let's do a little one over here where the poppy, a pod on there. And so sometimes they're quite round. As they start drying, they definitely become very round. And then their stems become actually harder, so they're usually not as curved. But anyway, we can add that here. Now on the top, I don't know if a star is the right word for that, but where did we see that? Right here. And that appears a little bit different because the angle is different, but the easy way for me to make this little thing on the top is I just kind of make it like little stars. Now the more it dries out, the more it pulls away from the pod, and it will have this appearance like this one has a little bit. And we talked about the seeds. Well, the seeds are coming out right up in underneath these little stars when it's dry. Then that's where they'll be coming from. So those are some characteristics that allow us to identify our poppies here. Now over here I've added a center, and let's do that. And you can't do that until your petals are dry, or do your petals first and then add your center after. Now the centers on many of the varieties, they look quite black, and they are black, but that black has a multitude of colors in it. And so I don't like to use a straight black. I either like to use brown and blue together, or a purple and a kind of a gray to create that center. And the center doesn't have to be round, completely round, because as you look, oh, see, we're only seeing the sides here. But as you look at some of them, whoop, here we go. We're only, you're not seeing it completely round. So we're gonna do that same thing over here. Now, did you see I didn't even change my brush, and it just took so much color over here. All of a sudden you can see that it's purple, where here, maybe there was just more color on there. Maybe I'm not right on that. So I'm just gonna add them like that and let those kind of dry. but sometimes the base of some of these that are just on the side, and again, not always, but sometimes you're going to see a little bit of color, so I sometimes like to put a little bit of color there. Let's go back to this poppy. Sometimes it's a center that's dark, and then there'll be these little bleed outs on the petals coming away from the centers. Not always, but sometimes, some varieties. Okay, now I'm going to bring in some greens, and let's just, now when I think of poppies, I don't think of a bright green. Well, this looks quite bright green here. That's exactly bright green, but I always think of it as almost a pale, a lot more blue in it. So I kind of bring, rather than that spring green, I bring a little blue. I didn't mention, so we've got the circle for this poppy pot, and then there's this little part before the stem, and so that's what that is. And again, it's just another characteristic that helps you identify your flower, because I'm never painting them exact, because remember, I'm not about perfect and exactness. I think artistic look is not perfect. Okay, let's come over here, and I've done this wrong because I'm left-handed. I should be painting over here rather than across my, so when I bring the paints on this, it's just so different than, the papers are immediately different to me, but I don't know if visually you can see that. And I am going to have to move it like this because I can. So of those shapes that we've brought in, or colors is what I was going to say, these are still have a lot of life in them, so they have more green than the pods. As they start to dry, they have less bright green. To be too long, I mentioned to you, and so I'm gonna, I think you can probably add color to stems pretty easily, so I'm gonna go past that. These are dry here, so let's go back to here. Now we'll switch out and move this over here. Let's go back to these and add just a little more color. The poppies I mentioned have multiple leaves that come out, and sometimes I just quickly add color on a different level, a little higher, to show another petal. Let's go down to this one and just bring another petal into it. I don't remember what color we brought here. Some of the same color on our colored poppy so that it has variety. So I love to bring color to things, so I'll come back and bring whatever's on my brush from the petals and bring it into the stems, and then I really like to paint these poppy pods, and as they're dry, which is a little harder to do right now, because I like them to be layered, is I'll put a little purple in there, and then I'll put a little blue on top of that, and I just really think that they can be just a really lovely little piece of art itself, just the little poppy pods. Let me see. Okay, so now, and I'll go back to these because these are super dry, and these are not quite finished, and maybe these aren't even finished, but I'm just going to come back and show the next stage that we could do with our paper. And right now, the cheaper paper is looking more vivid than the more expensive, but we've worked this one a little more than this one. So, but I'm going to come back, and we don't always have to add some pen, but this one doesn't have a lot of definition, and so I think actually the pen could come back and add that for us. And it's just, I like to move it fast because I think that you get a prettier look. And so there, we've just created some petals that weren't completely filled in with the color, but I sometimes like that. And this one, I could have left it just plain too, but we can also bring in some of the pen and just add a little bit of nice touches to those. The same with these. This is that little part I told you that comes down and then the stem. So we can bring that in. We can bring a couple other lines in. So I'm gonna call this, oh, remember we want to sign our work. Let's sign our work at this point, because then we can still come back in, but that's already there. I can sign these, and we can do this one. And to keep this video short, I'm not going to go ahead and keep working these. I'll perhaps do this one just a bit, and then we will call this video done, and then we're going to come back in and do 2 videos today. So we'll come back in. If this one isn't too long, then we can come back in and do another one. And I thought we would do some more seed pods. These are acorns, which have the seeds to the oak trees. And then these are some pods, or they're not pods, but they're seeds that come from a maple tree. And these are both very easy, and let's come back in and do another video on those. Okay, have fun with your poppies. I hope you learned just a little bit about them. And if you get them painted and you can send them my way, that's always fun for Grandma. Okay, love you guys. Have fun painting.